Once upon a time, Vera Jonah would only smile at herself like that. During the summer vacation of my sophomore year of high school, I plucked up the courage to confess to Gerald Bacon, the school grass I had a crush on for 2 years. Gerald Bacon looked me up and down, and smiled. Vera Jonah, could you please look in the mirror? Because of this sentence, I hid from him for the whole summer. When school started, we were assigned to the same table. It's just a table of 3 people, and I sit between him and the schoolgirl. During class time, they frequently passed notes and whispered to me, and I sat in the middle and was forced to help them pass notes. Later, Gerald Bacon wrote a note to the schoolgirl, "I like you." Before I could hand it over to the school flower, it was confiscated by the teacher. The teacher read out the words on the note and taunted me, "People, who are so beautiful, have not confessed to Gerald Bacon, but you are so stumbling, and confessed, otherwise how can you say that ugly people are so weird?" The class burst into laughter, but Gerald Bacon ignored me, and didn't explain for me. I held back my tears, isolated. At this moment, the young master of the Shanghai circle at the back table of me lazily raised his hand. "Teacher, you misunderstood. Here's a note I wrote to Vera Jonah." The moment the note was picked up by the teacher, my heart was about to stop. The teacher picked up the note and, despite my obstruction, read it aloud. "I like you." After reading the words on the note, he looked at me mockingly. "The schoolgirl is so beautiful and didn't confess to Gerald Bacon. You look so stumbling, but confessed, otherwise how can you say that ugly people are so weird?" The class burst into laughter. Such an ugly person would have thought of spring. The school grass is really unlucky, and he was actually taken by a toad. I guessed that there would be a day when I first lined up the seats. You see, what am I talking about? Isn't it Vera Jonah? A little self-aware, the schoolgirl didn't confess, but you confessed. Don't you have a mirror at home? I was not in good health in high school, and I often drank medicine, which caused my body to gain weight, and frequent acne on my face. Because I had a lot of acne on my face, and my name wasn't very nice, my classmates nicknamed me Toad. At first, I stopped it, but the more they screamed, the more I cared, the more I looked like a clown. Then he went with them. But unlike the boys who were heckling, Gerald Bacon never called me that. Even when I was laughed at by the boys in the class because of the pimples on my face, he would go back with a cold face, "Keep your mouth shut." He would also ask me when I had a problem, and sincerely praise me when I had a clear idea. "Vera Jonah, you are very smart." Once because of him, I thought I wasn't that bad. Until the day of the confession, the self-confidence building that I had carefully built for myself, with 2 years of youth collapsed. I tightened the corners of my clothes, and my palms were sweating. No, this teacher, I didn't write this note. I subconsciously looked at Gerald Bacon. He turned a blind eye to my situation, turned his pen, and looked down at the paper that the teacher was explaining, without raising his eyes at me, the whole time, and without any explanation. The sun that once hung high in the sky suddenly dimmed at this moment. My face turned pale. Seeing this, the teacher looked at me, with even more disdain. "What, could it be that Gerald Bacon took the initiative to write you a note? You're too self-conscious. Students should focus more on their studies, and not always think about these feelings and loves." I bowed my head next to the training, hoping that if I behaved obediently, the matter would be solved sooner. But the teacher, known as the Mandarin Duck Madman, obviously didn't intend to let me go so easily, and was bound to beat me hard as a typical case. He knocked on Gerald Bacon's desk to get him to his feet. "Vera Jonah wrote you a note. What do you say?" I looked at him wistfully, hoping he would explain it for me. Gerald Bacon stood up and looked at me nonchalantly. "Vera Jonah, study hard. Don't fall in love. I don't like you like this." The classmates in the class began to heckle again. "Yo yo yo, the toad has been rejected." I looked at Gerald Bacon with wide eyes. The words he said without saltiness or lightness brought far more harm than those people combined. I held back my tears and couldn't speak. I am a terre incontinence physique. I knew that as soon as I spoke, my tears would burst immediately. When the time comes, I'll only be more embarrassed. I desperately prayed that the teacher would let me go. At that moment, Carr, who was sitting at the back table of me, lazily raised his hand. "Teacher, you misunderstood. This incident is obviously caused by Gerald Bacon. Because I wrote this note to Vera Jonah. Carr is a rebellious transfer student, who has caused headaches for countless teachers. but his grades are very good, and he can win the first place in the national physics competition before transferring, and the school treats him as a sweetheart, and he has the capital to be unscrupulous. He was like an unrestrained wind, blowing into my fearful youth. If it weren't for the fact that he beat up a gangster, who loves to lift people's skirts at the beginning of school, the scene was very bloody, and with his good appearance as a movie star, it is estimated that he would become a new school grass. One of the boys immediately laughed. No, Carr, you like toads. Carr squinted at him. If she's a toad, then what are you, Kappa? The boy's big teeth immediately withdrew. The teacher tapped heavily on the blackboard. Give me silence. Carr, what are you talking about? Carr spread his hands and looked at him innocently. I didn't talk nonsense. She has good grades. I like her. What's wrong? The teacher was so angry that he couldn't do it. You two will come to my office after class. After class, we went to the office together and wrote a review together. When I returned to the classroom, the teacher had already switched seats. I was still sitting with Caroline Carter, the schoolgirl, but Gerald Bacon was instead sitting in the same position as a boy, who was ridiculed by Carr as a Kappa. Carr was moved to the last row. He didn't sit either, because he was going to the physics competition class held by the school in the last class, so he carried his school bag, chewed mints, and left. I didn't have time to thank him for helping me out. After changing seats, Caroline Carter lay on the table and cried. Beautiful girls are always pitiful when they cry. It didn't take long for her to be surrounded by a circle of friends. It's so good, she doesn't have to hold back her tears. There will be a lot of people to coax her when she cries. I thought Caroline Carter was a fan of Gerald Bacon. After all, they pass notes every day. But with the comfort of her friends' gossip, I slowly pieced together the reason for her crying. She loves the new Carr. Carr is a young master in the Shanghai circle, with a good family background, and they used to be in the same school when they were in junior high school. Carr spoke for me, lying that he had written the note. Now she has been transferred to a position far away from her. The little sisters around Caroline Carter comforted her with a lot of gossip. Don't be sad, Caroline Carter. Carr definitely doesn't like Vera Jonah. Yes, he's just a good guy to help Vera Jonah. Don't take it seriously. You're so pretty. Carr must like you better. Caroline Carter was still crying. I know, but he was so close to me, and now that he is sitting so far away, I am so sad. Looking at Caroline Carter, who was surrounded and comforted by her friends, I suddenly felt a little envious. Some people's youth is favored. Some people's youth is all over the place. I subconsciously felt guilty. If it weren't for me, they wouldn't have sat that far. Caroline Carter is so pretty. Carr must have liked her too. But at the same time, there was a very small voice in my heart arguing for me. It's not my fault. I shouldn't feel guilty that someone helped me out. The next day, I woke up early, and when I arrived, the classroom was empty. I sat down to review my mistakes from last night. Just then, a chilled lollipop was attached to my face. Sure you. I looked up to meet Carr's smiling eyes. Very beautiful lollipop with a crystal clear strawberry shape. I wasn't embarrassed to answer. Yesterday, thank you. I'm sorry for causing you so much trouble. I couldn't help but ask, you. Do you regret helping me? Carr gave me a look. It's a bit of a regret. My heart sank to the bottom, and I thought it was. Carr put the lollipop in my hand, and smiled. If I hadn't confessed, maybe you would have been at the same table as me. He put down the sentence, walked to the back row, and said no more. I couldn't understand what he was saying. Would Carr want to sit with me and discuss my best math problem? I can't think of any other reason. I was in a daze with that lollipop. At that moment, I saw Gerald Bacon, who had arrived in the classroom at some unknown time, leaning against the door, staring coldly at the lollipop in my hand for an unknown amount of time. I woke up from a dream, put the lollipop in my pencil case, and didn't eat it. Gerald Bacon walked past me, with a cold face. At the end of the third period, everyone was a little hungry. I looked at the strawberry lollipop in my pencil case, wanted to eat it, but I didn't want to. Caroline Carter was lying on her desk after class, and when her friend asked what was wrong, she said, low blood sugar, dizziness. Gerald Bacon passed by her, and looked at me. You don't have a root of candy. Give it to her. I was stunned, and subconsciously protected my pencil case. No, this was given to me by someone else. Gerald Bacon frowned and lowered his voice. Vera Jonah, obedient. Without waiting for me to refuse, he took the strawberry lollipop out of my pencil case, handed it to Caroline Carter, and looked down at me. She's hypoglycemic, don't be so selfish. Caroline Carter unpacks the clear cardboard package, and says to Gerald Bacon, thank you. Carr walked past me with his bag, watched Caroline Carter eat the lollipop he gave me, and walked away without saying a word. As Caroline Carter chewed on the lollipop, I felt like something inside me was slowly cracking. This is the 100th time I've given away what was mine. The next day, I arrived at the classroom very early, hoping to meet Carr and explain to him about the lollipop yesterday. I looked up at the door, and it was Gerald Bacon, who entered. He put the same strawberry lollipop on my table, and said, give it back. I said, I don't want to. He frowned. What Carr gave you, you want? He handed me the candy without refusal. I, on the other hand, turned around and threw it in the trash. Gerald Bacon's face turned ugly. Vera Jonah, what do you mean by that? I said, you can give my candy to somebody else. Why can't I just throw your candy in the trash? He gritted his teeth. Whatever you want. On that day, Carr arrived very late. I couldn't talk to him all day. This semester, our evening self-study has been extended from 9 to 10 o'clock. After the evening self-study class, it was already past 10 o'clock, and many adults crowded at the door to pick it up. It's a bit unsafe for girls to go home alone at night, but my parents are busy with work and can't come and pick me up. Gerald Bacon walked beside me. Let's go, I'll take you home. His house is in the same direction as my house. I shook my head, no. Then, quickly shake him off. Running to the intersection, I saw Carr pushing his bike home. There was a car, but it was not ridden. It's like waiting for someone on purpose. I mustered up the courage to catch up. Carr, that lollipop, I didn't mean to. But I suddenly stopped again. Caroline Carter is so pretty. Carr would have preferred to give her candy than me. Am I being amorous again? This has happened before. There is a boy in the class who likes me to be at the same table, so he stuffed me with good food, deliberately approached me, and asked me to help him chase me at the same table. I suddenly regretted saying that. Carr slowly turned his head. Got it, forgive you. Under the street lamp, his eyes were as bright as stars. Let's go home together. At that moment, my noisy heart suddenly quieted down. The wind blows on the face, cool. When I got to the window, he suddenly said to me, wait a minute. I stood where I was, waiting for him. The windows are full of eye-catching clothes. I glanced at it and withdrew my gaze. 5 minutes later, Carr came running over and shoved the strawberry lollipop into my hand. This time it's going to be protected. The lollipop is very light, held in the hand, but heavy, very sweet, and very steady. From that day on, we became acquainted. Every morning, he would bring me a piece of candy. Between classes, we discussed topics together. In the evening, Carr pushed his bicycle and went home with me, in the evening breeze. On his birthday, I gave him a watch with the money I had saved for a long time. He put it on his hand and looked at it over and over again, never taking it off again. Approaching the high school entrance examination, on Friday afternoon, we got out of school early. On the way home, we memorized each other's English words as we walked. Walking to the window I passed that night, I was caught by a lily-pleated dress. Not expensive, but beautiful. But I looked at it a few times and walked away. Carr noticed. Isn't it pretty? I said. Pretty looking, but, forget it. Carr approached me. Why? I was silent for a moment. I'm ugly. Carr stopped, leaned down slightly, and ripped my bangs open. Nonsense. It's cute. Naturally. I don't take it seriously. Less comfort me. We parted ways at a fork in the road. When I got home, I opened my textbook and began to read it. I received a message from Carr on my phone. Down. As I walked down, Carr pulled out a bag. A gift for you. In the bag, there was the dress I had just taken a fancy to. I asked, why? He said, isn't it your birthday? I know Carr birthday because he is so popular, and his birthday date will be heard from teachers, passing classmates, and even parents. But for a person like me, it is precious to have 2 or 3 people remember. Carr smiled. When I filled out the form, I saw your ID number and remembered your birthday. You must be beautiful when you wear it. When he said this, my heart skipped a beat. So that weekend, I stumbled into the barbershop and cut off my heavy bangs. I still have acne, but it seems to be a little prettier to dress up like this. In fact, I was very good looking when I was a child, and everyone praised me for being like a white jade dumpling, with round deer eyes, a small and delicate nose and mouth. Later, I was diagnosed with a heart problem, and I had surgery in the summer vacation of my 3rd year of junior high school, and then I took medicine for 2 years. Perhaps due to the influence of the drug, my face began to grow acne constantly, and my body began to gain weight. It was then that I gradually began to dislike dressing up, and lost my girlish heart. On Monday, I took off my glasses, which were not deep, combed my hair carefully, and used a hairpin to fasten the broken hair on my forehead. For some reason, I'm looking forward to meeting Carr. When I arrived at school, Carr hadn't arrived. I spread out the question book to get ready for revision. Just then, I heard a voice from outside the classroom. Caroline Carter, you're wearing this beautiful dress today. Yes, Gerald Bacon gave it to me. Caroline Carter walked in from outside the classroom. She was wearing the same dress as me. Caroline Carter has air bangs, fluffy hair, white and glowing skin, and with this dress, she looks as beautiful as a little princess. As long as you compare it, you will find that this dress is much more suitable for her than for me. When Caroline Carter walked into the classroom, her gaze fell on me strangely. The rest of the class hadn't reacted at first, but as she sat down next to me, my male table leader shouted, "Vera Jonah, this dress on Caroline Carter was bought by Gerald Bacon. How can you be a scholar?" The others also noticed it, and everyone's faces were filled with a bit of weirdness and mockery. "Yes, it's not the same dress that the colonel bought for the school flower. You're the school girl, and it's not terrible to hit the shirt. Whoever is ugly is embarrassed. If it were me, I would definitely not wear this skirt to death. Wear the same skirt as the school girl. Can you be a little self-aware? I'll tell you she likes Gerald Bacon. It's a bit of a revealing day, don't you know? Vera Jonah used to lick Gerald Bacon. Gerald Bacon's breakfast. Gerald Bacon's basketball. She brought water. Gerald Bacon when she came home. She followed him, and every day she wanted to stick to him. Hey, Vera Jonah, can she look in the mirror? Anyway, if I look like her, I'll be embarrassed to stay with Gerald Bacon. I don't know why. Having a crush on good-looking boys is like committing some heinous sin to us ugly people. It will attract many malicious intent. They don't even think about it. I arrived before Caroline Carter, and I don't know what she's wearing today. If I had known, I wouldn't have worn it. Of course, the self-esteem of an ugly person is not self-esteem. It's just a casual joke they make. Spice up the joy of life. Just as I was blushing and trying to retort, Caroline Carter said, "Okay, don't talk about it. It's not normal to hit your shirt." She looked generous. "Vera Jonah, don't take it personally. I don't mind at all." After she said that, I couldn't say anything. I know what sounds weird about it, but I can't tell. But I knew that I was having a restless time that day. My back was poked with by a myriad of sharp stares, and I felt like I was about to be stripped naked. I even wanted to find some excuse to take a leave of absence and change the clothes on my body. Carr didn't show up that morning. When it came to meals, I didn't go to the cafeteria. In order to save more time for studying, I usually take a lunch break at school. Gerald Bacon didn't go either, staying in the classroom to nibble on bread. As I worked, he put a cup of yogurt on my desk. "Drink some yogurt. You can't afford to learn like this." I don't understand. Even though he has said such excessive things to me before, he has to care about me in such a small matter. I pushed his yogurt away. "I don't want it." Gerald Bacon frowned. "Did you wear this dress for Carr today?" I looked at him. "What does it have to do with you?" Gerald Bacon stared at me for a long time, and suddenly said, "Vera Jonah, I beg you, don't like him. Even if you dress up carefully, he can't see it. He has been participating in the national physics competition in the past few days. As long as he can win the first place, he can be sent to Tsinghua University. Your grades, if you rush to Fudan at most. Tsinghua is no fun at all. Vera Jonah, you're not from the same world at all." He put down the yogurt and left. After he left, I looked at the cup of yogurt, thought about what he said, and brushed 2 more sets of rolls. On duty that afternoon, while I was sweeping the floor in front of the classroom, Caroline Carter accidentally splashed a mop of water on me. Immediately my clothes were soaked, dirty, and no longer white. She apologized to me. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." I didn't get angry, but Gerald Bacon stood in front of Caroline Carter like a protective one, pulled me into the classroom, and wiped my wet skirt with his coat. He wiped it and said, "Don't blame Caroline Carter. She didn't mean to. Anyway, you don't fit this dress. Don't wear it in the future. And when school is over, I'll buy you a new one." At this moment, the stool at the back of the classroom was kicked over by Carr, who says she's not suitable. "Who do you look down on?" Caroline Carter stopped the angry Carr. "Carr, don't be angry. Gerald Bacon doesn't mean anything other than Vera Jonah. This dress just happened to collide with the one Gerald Bacon bought for me." Carr scoffed and looked at Gerald Bacon. "Why, you bought this dress too, scholar?" Hearing him say this, Gerald Bacon and Caroline Carter's faces immediately changed. Caroline Carter looked at me. "Carr, Vera Jonah, you bought this dress?" Carr ignored her and walked over to me and grabbed my wrist. "Go. My clothes are soaking wet. Go home and change." That night, I sat in the back seat of his bike for the first time. The wind blew across my face, and my tears suddenly flowed uncontrollably, and the wet water stuck to my face, which was ugly and embarrassing. At that moment, I even wondered why Caroline Carter looked better than everyone else when she cried, "I'm having a hard time. I know I'm having a hard time." I bit my lip and didn't let out a single cry. Thankfully, that day, Carr didn't look back, retaining the last bit of self-esteem. The car was fast, and Carr said, "Hold on to me, don't fall off." I ran out of courage, and I only dared to grab his coat. When I got home, I changed out of the lily pleated dress, and went back to my modest dress. Heavy black rimmed glasses, dull dark coat. The gray is the background color of my 17 years old. The night before New Year's Day, my mom invited Gerald Bacon and his mom to my house for hot pot. My family is similar to Gerald Bacon's family. My father has gone on a business trip, and they often meet when they buy groceries, and they come and go and become friends. As soon as Gerald Bacon walked through the door, he handed me a fluffy white scarf. Gift. I didn't. Suddenly, I received a message on my phone. "Carr, come and see me. I'm alone at home." After that day, I didn't keep in touch with Carr as often. I often excuse myself from talking to him because I am busy with my studies. Gerald Bacon is right to say that we are not people of one world. I was like a shrunken turtle, making an excuse, "I'm out of town and can't go over." His next sentence was, "I have a fever." I was silent for a moment, then picked up my jacket from the hanger. My mom asked me, "Where are you going at this time?" I walked to the door and put on my shoes. "Go to the schoolmate." Gerald Bacon stopped me. "Are you going to see Carr?" I didn't deny it, but he suddenly took my hand and made a humble gesture. "Please, don't go." I pushed his hand away. Carr stayed in a room with a river view. The door opened, and it was pitch black. He chuckled lowly. "Didn't you say in the field? I'm sorry. Why are you hiding from me?" I was silent. He turned on the lights in the house. The lights on the ceiling came on one by one. I saw the actress on the poster in the house, and was a little surprised. "You like her too?" Carr laughed. "It's better to say than like." He looked at me. "You like her?" I nodded vigorously. Carr slowly approached. "If I can let you meet her, can you grant me a wish?" "Bewitched," I said. "Okay." Less than a step away from me, he slowly leaned down, so close that he could see every one of his eyelashes, almost touching my lips. He was so close that I could barely breathe. I tightened my clothes in fear, and he forced me to lean against the table, overwhelmed. His warm hand was on the back of my hand, and he smiled a little wickedly. "Afraid of me? Why don't you hide? You'll be unhappy if you hide from it." Well, I was afraid that I wouldn't be happy, but what if I was going to do something bad to you? "You won't." "Maybe." "Vera Jonah, don't trust me blindly. I'm a year older than you. I'm an adult. There's no one else in the family except you and me. I'm alone and widowed in the same room. I can do whatever I want. You really don't refuse." I curled my fingers in confusion and asked, blankly, but I don't want you to hate me. Carr straightened up, his eyes full of tenderness. Vera Jonah, each of us is an independent person. We have our own minds, so we must also have the courage to be hated. You're afraid I'm not happy. You're afraid Caroline Carter won't be happy. You're afraid Gerald Bacon won't be happy. But why don't you care? You're unhappy. I hope that the next time I encounter something you hate, I will be brave enough to say no. He told me, I'm going to take the first place in this competition. I'm not showing you off. I'm just trying to say, I can make it, and so can you. You are not anyone's green leaf. Whose foil? You came to this world just to be yourself. Fight for yourself, a little more. From now on, what's yours is yours, and you must support yourself completely and absolutely. My eyelashes fluttered. No one has ever said anything like this to me. All along, I can let it go. When I was a child, I played the role playing of Rainbow Cat and Blue Rabbit, and in the end, only Ma Sanyang, who no one wanted to play, was left, and that was my role. My family wasn't poor, but my brother's new shoes had to be bought first, and the hairpin I wanted was put off again and again. The neighbor's sister, who came to play at home, took a fancy to my beloved doll, and I was educated by my family, and gave it to her with tears in my eyes. But a week later I saw the doll in the trash can at the door, because of the fear of being hated. So I wronged myself again and again, and gave away what originally belonged to me. So I wronged myself again, and gave up my own interests. Carr's words touched me deeply. I said softly, okay. That day, I stayed until 12 o'clock in the evening. On that day, several large and bustling fireworks bloomed on the riverside outside the window, and they exploded in the air in a colorful way, illuminating the 17-year-old gray me. Carr whispered in my ear, Happy New Year, Vera Jonah. After New Year's Day, Carr's photo and name were posted on the school's honor roll. At the morning meeting, the president publicly praised Carr and sent him to Tsinghua University with the first place in the national physics competition. Overwhelming applause resounded across the campus. I was more excited than anyone else, and my palms were red. At the age of 17, it was the first time I had such a clear goal. I also want to go to Tsinghua University, not trying to follow Carr. I just want to hear the applause that is as warm as today's, the applause that belongs to me. I studied harder than usual. After the winter break, I have stopped taking medication for a long time. At the beginning of the school year, the class president, who took my winter vacation homework, looked at me unexpectedly. Vera Jonah, why are you so beautiful after a winter vacation? I touched my face. After stopping the medication, I stopped gaining weight and even lost a lot of weight. It seems that there are no longer pimples on his face, and his skin has become a lot whiter. Walking on the road, I can occasionally hear many people compliment me on my beauty. The gay table at which Carr had taunted the kappa also complimented me. Vera Jonah, you're so different now. No one around me calls me a toad. Gradually, people began to confess to me, and even blocked the window after class, just to look at me, but I don't care anymore. At the same time, my grades were also at the top, and I exceeded the expectations of my teachers again and again. The teacher regarded me as a seeded player in the sprint to Tsinghua University. On the eve of the 100-day pledge meeting, the Chinese teacher chose me to give a speech. I have written speeches for a long time, and can memorize them proficiently. But at the critical moment, the head teacher changed his mind. He said, Caroline Carter's image seems to be a little better, and she has speech experience and good expressiveness, and there are still many leaders of the Education Bureau who are going to inspect on the day of the 100-day pledge. So let her go up. Vera Jonah, you have a good manuscript. Just leave it to Caroline Carter. Let her memorize the manuscript in the next few days, and you must fully cooperate with her before the 100-day oath. Caroline Carter stood up with a bright smile. Don't worry, teacher, I'll definitely behave well. She held out her hand to me. Vera Jonah, give me the manuscript. Her hand was stretched out in front of me, and all eyes were on me. For a moment, I was almost resigned to handing over to her the manuscript I had worked so hard to write and memorized, as I always did. But at that moment, I saw myself staying up late at night, typing out the speech word by word on the computer. I saw myself squeezing into the office in my spare time to discuss the details of the manuscript with the Chinese teacher. I saw myself who was able to speak fluently from the podium, and knew every word of my speech by heart. These images, frame by frame, zoom in my mind. I can't live up to myself. The moment the manuscript was pulled out, I suddenly stuffed it back, and stood up. Teacher, I have memorized this manuscript. No one is more familiar with this manuscript than me. I also had a lot of speech experience before high school. I am no worse than Caroline Carter. I am sure I can do this speech well. The head teacher was stunned. Seconds later, there was a round of applause, in the last row of the classroom. Carr sat in the last row, clapping and looking at me with satisfaction. Immediately afterwards, the class burst into applause one after another. At that moment, I felt my hands and feet shaking. It's not fear, it's excitement, like a prison bird breaking through a cage. The head teacher sighed. Okay, you can try it. I ignored Caroline Carter's ugly face and sat down. Each of us is an independent person. We have to have the courage to be hated. On the day of the 100-day pledge, I stood on the podium in the auditorium in a white dress, and raised my right hand. We were born to be mountains, not streams, and I want to look down on the mediocre ravines, from the top of the peaks. We were born to be human beings, not mustards. The whole school applauded, and the students' oath was like thunder. Win the college entrance examination. Win the college entrance examination. After the 100-day pledge, my grades continued to rise steadily. However, Caroline Carter's results began to fall short of expectations. On the evening of self-study 30 days before the college entrance examination, she tore up her paper and cried on the table because she made a lot of mistakes in the weekly test. But because it is the eve of the college entrance examination, everyone's study time is tight, so no one can spare the energy to surround her and coax her. When there is a conflict of interest, most people still choose to defend their own interests. On the day of the college entrance examination, Carr, who had already escorted Tsinghua University to the examination room to see me off, when I entered the examination room, he was like an old father sending his daughter. You've worked hard, leave the rest to fate. As I sat in the exam room, my heart was beating fast, but when I saw the first question, my mood gradually calmed down and my thinking became clearer and clearer. It was a hot few days before the college entrance examination, but Carr stayed outside and waved at me coolly when I came out of the exam room. After the college entrance examination, I breathed a sigh of relief. On the day the college entrance examination results came out, I was very calm. Go to the page and enter your information. I scored 710 points. The first thing that came to my mind was Carr, and I ran to his house like crazy. Carr, I'm in. I got in. I got a 710. Carr was stunned as well, and then hugged me like a big dream. Vera Jonah, you've been in. Just when we were overjoyed, I suddenly saw a familiar person. Isn't this the popular actress? Julie Eugen. How did she get out of the poster? Carr coughed lightly and introduced to me. Introduction. This is my mom. I stammered and pulled out my notebook. But, can you sign it for me? Julie Eugen pinched my face. The little girl looked so cute. That day, Aunt Julie Eugen took me to the room and dressed up. When I looked in the mirror, I couldn't believe it was me. When I came out, Carr's ears were red. That night, he sent me home. You said to me that day that if I could take you to meet your idol, you would grant me a wish. I made it clear in advance that you can refuse this wish, and I won't force you. After saying this, he suddenly clasped my hand nervously, and his voice was hoarse. You can. Will you be my girlfriend? I didn't answer. Carr's heart sank a little. At that moment, I suddenly tiptoed and kissed him on the lips. Then he let go of his hand and ran home with a red face. He was left alone, dissatisfied, and anxious. In the summer of that year, in order to celebrate the school's 2 Tsinghua schools, the principal set off cannons at the school gate. My name and Carr's name were very close to each other on the Hall of Fame, and some people joked that it looked like a wedding photo. Caroline Carter did not perform well in the college entrance examination, and decided to repeat it. Gerald Bacon played average, 985 to 211, and I gave a satisfactory answer to my youth. Extra 1. Carr met Vera Jonah when she was in elementary school. Carr was born with a deformity and 3 arms. The extra hands could not be extended, and the delicate internal organs were attached, making surgery difficult. Because it was a premature baby, its body was not well developed, and it was not suitable for surgery at that time. And before the age of 9, the extra 3rd arm was retained. Every time he was hospitalized, all the children who saw him would cry when they saw him, calling him an ugly monster. His nickname at the time was the Ugly 8. Carr before the age of 9 was not cool at all, even inferior, sensitive, vulnerable. He is resistant to the outside world and does not want to come into contact with people. It wasn't until he was 8 years old that a girl came to his inpatient unit named Vera Jonah. Vera Jonah is beautiful. Her skin is glowing white. Her eyes are as round as a fawn, clear, clean, and she can see the whole way at a glance. Wearing a white dress, her long hair is softly draped behind her back, like an angel. At that time, how could he have imagined that such Vera Jonah was called a toad in high school, hiding her love for beauty in endless malice? Of the kids in the inpatient unit, only Vera Jonah was willing to play with him. Carr didn't understand. Aren't you afraid of me? Vera Jonah blinked. Why be afraid? I'm still envious. You have one more hand than us. You can do your homework a little faster. Carr It's just that Vera Jonah plays with other children in addition to him. She smiled angelically at everyone. Carr didn't want her to play with anyone else. He was so jealous of every boy who could run with her, and he was mad with jealousy. It took 9 years for him to be at his best with Vera Jonah. Excision surgery, postoperative recovery, taking the most bitter medicine, enduring pain and exercising, to become the best learner. When he tried desperately, he suddenly realized that he seemed to be qualified to stand by her side. And then, finally, in a certain class, I sat down at the back table of the person and raised my hand firmly. Confesses his decade-long crush. Extra 2. When Vera Jonah stopped in front of the window to look at the lily-pleated dress, Gerald saw it. Vera Jonah didn't walk into the store at the time, only glanced a few times before following Carr out of the window. Gerald walked into the store and bought the dress. That day, he walked downstairs to Vera Jonah's house and wondered how to give the gift. Just then, Carr went downstairs. For some reason, Gerald subconsciously hid. Carr smiled and medged Vera Jonah, and leaned under the tree to wait for her to come down. After Vera Jonah trotted down, Carr handed the present. A birthday present for you. Vera Jonah had a good smile, and Gerald always knew it. The eyes are crooked, like the moon. Once upon a time, Vera Jonah would only smile like that to herself. Now, it's someone else. Gerald heart was inexplicably irritable. He went to Caroline Carter's house, and gave her the present. On Monday, Gerald didn't expect Vera Jonah to actually wear the dress Carr gave him. When he bumped into his shirt, he was actually a little snickering. When Vera Jonah's clothes got wet, he said that the dress was not for her and that he should not wear it in the future. That's not what he really said. It's just that inexplicably, he doesn't want Vera Jonah to continue wearing the clothes that Carr gave him, even with this hurtful excuse. In fact, after Vera Jonah confessed to him that day, he regretted not appearing in front of him for the rest of the summer. At the beginning of the school year, they sat at the same table and Gerald was happy. He frequently passed notes to Caroline Carter in an attempt to get Vera Jonah's attention, but he was too proud to admit it. Vera Jonah may never know that note that says, "I like you." It was written to her,